channel. I'm Liam. Round 19 will be soon upon us. The fixtures have finally been finalised. Hope everyone's doing well, staying safe in tough times for a lot of this country. But hopefully I can give you some decent trade insights for this week's AFL Fantasy action. As I always do, let's start off with these rookies. There's actually finally a couple of decent options this week after slim pickings over the last month. But first of all, a defender mid option in Sam Durham scored a solid 49 for the Bombers on the weekend. Did just play the Roos, but I feel like he's done enough to cement a spot in that lineup for a little bit. Defender mid with handy flexibility. You can trade him in as a defender, trade him in as a midfielder, and handy with a lot of late outs. I feel like are coming now with all the restrictions of tier 1 sites. If players visit them, go into quarantine, you just have to be wary. There might be a few more late outs like Mills last week. And in Green, Mills and Toby Green in the Sydney game, Dunkley this week, Rowan Marshall this week. Just have to be a bit wary. So bench cover is pretty handy, and also flexibility as you're able to move your players during the round, like I did last week with Harms. Utilise his defensive mid status with Bianco. Netted me a few more points than I would have. So Durham is a nice option. Of course, wait until teams. If he doesn't get named, of course, don't bring him in. But he's a solid, one of the two solid rookies I like this week. Along with Connor West, scored a nice 76. Actually spent a little bit of time actually in the midfield. A lot of rookies who get labelled as mid spend the first part of their season up forward predominantly. But he was in and around the action, scored a solid 76, very nice break even, 202, not much to pay for him, and a handy little downgrade option in the midfield if you're looking to offload someone there. He provides decent cover, plus I probably wouldn't want to play him at M8, but if you've got players out for 1 week, 2 weeks, I feel like he would provide handy cover. I don't think he can get up to Jeremy Sharp, the Sharp levels, but he's a great pick. Eagles, with a lot of injuries, you can be wary that he might get dropped, and they're not scared to drop their rookies. But with a solid win last week, I believe he certainly holds his spot. I don't really like any others. Ollie Henry, he needed to kick a few goals to get to that 76. I don't see him averaging more than probably 40. But a forward option, yes, but only in desperate times. Another option with Flynn going down, Briggs could be back. So wait on see on that one. He's 220. He scored a handy little 60 last time he played. We'll see what the Giants do with that one. So they're probably the three. If you want to defend mid, forward, those are the three options I'd be looking to target for this week. Probably wouldn't want to target anyone in these 300, 400s. There's a sneaky option if you're absolutely stuffed for cash, wanting to bring in a mid-pricer. Schoenberg's shown a little bit over the last few weeks, playing a lot more mid-time. Crows will want to develop him. They believing he's their next mid star. So he's actually been very impressive in his last couple of games. He pretty much won the game for them against St Kilda in that a wet, ugly game in Cairns, and shown that he can score. It's 113. Uh, Price at an awkward 480, but forwards this season haven't set the world on fire. So I believe he could go probably minimum 85 the rest of the year, which would be solid. That would be that's about 150k under price, and it could be used a little stepping stone later on for the last rounds. But if your team's already set in stone, I wouldn't go down to him. Not a desperate pick, but someone who wants a little stepping stone. Pretty low break even this week. He's certainly a solid option. I don't rate any others in this bracket. Onto this interesting 500 in this price bracket. Tim Kelly, 94. He was pretty solid last week. Again, I rate him as a pick at 580k. Certainly 100k under 150k under price. Eagles, I know they only played Adelaide, but that win could give them a bit of momentum going into the rest of the season. And as I said last year, Kelly, very, very solid option to bring in if you're short of cash. Unlucky Marshall is out in the next 2 weeks because he probably would have been the most popular traded in player this week if he wasn't out. But look for him when he does return. Handy ruck forward status. Plus, he was building into his season with his time on ground slowly increasing over the last few weeks and produced a nice 120 last week. Would have been handy if you brought him in. I've been always wary of his injury worries, but he's so far no problems at all. Matt Kennedy I also like as a forward option. 116 last week. He's playing a pure mid role. He likes the ball in his hands. Is Carlton with lacking of mid options. Cripps being tagged out of games or just more going forward. They need people in the midfield, not other than just Walsh, to actually touch the ball. And Kennedy's been pretty impressive as of late. Had a down week last week, but he showed up this week for a solid score, and I do believe he can average that 90 to 95 for the rest of the year, which would set him a solid F6 to finish your year. Lastly, a defender in this bracket also can be played as a forward, taking a lot of kickouts. Bailey Dale, I think he's leading the league in kickouts. He gets a free 20 to 30 points every game. Bulldogs do like the ball in his hands. They play Melbourne this week, so the ball probably will be down there a lot more. He had a few off games which dropped his price a little bit, and at 600k looks a nice little option to complete the year. I would go for forwards. I would go Kennedy over Dale, but he would be my best defender in that price bracket for the rest of the year. Moving on to the more primo status, there's 2 picks here that look nice. I think I spoke about them both last week. I'll say it again. The Sydney defenders in Dawson and Lloyd. Dawson last year is pretty much replicating last year's season. Slow start, but then picking up at the end of the year. Taking a lot of more of Lloyd's kickouts. He's probably one of the best top 5 kicks in the league. They love the ball in his hands. And at 640, he's about probably 50, 60k under price. And I wouldn't be sad to have him at D5 or D6 for the rest of the year. As like Lloyd, he's 200k down on what he started at. If you said Jake Lloyd with 676, I would certainly not say no to bring him in. I do have the choice between these two this week. It's dependent on, do I go Dawson for history of finishing or Lloyd for his history of high ceiling scores. I'm still working that one out, but they're both brilliant options, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go 95, 100 for the rest of the year. As well, I don't really enjoy any of the other picks in this area. I've just forgot. It wasn't on that page, but in my team, Jaden Short with Hooley out. I like taking more kickouts. They want the ball more in his hands. A lot more cheap plus sixes in the back line without Hooley. So at 6.90, Short's another solid pick. And going under the radar a little bit because he probably wouldn't be in those in your trade centres high up in his last three. His average, they're all in the 90s, so would be a little bit way down the list. So someone that might come as a unique option at the back end of the year. In this 700-ish, Mills is, of course, the number one, along with Laird. Unfortunately, was out last week. I don't know if he's out for 14 days or 7 days. Have to wait on that one. But those are the top two defenders. If you don't have them, certainly try. I know it's hard with cash, but they're going to benefit you probably 20 to 30 a week just with their scoring ability. Other than them, Chris Mayne, I've been raving on about him for donkeys of weeks. Collingwood's backline, Chris struggled a lot this week. I think that was just a one-off. But Mayne, with his defensive status now, he gets so many plus sixes in the back line, it's not funny. At 7.30, he is a top six defender, along with Hearn, who's playing more of that quarterback role like Luke Ryan did last year for Fremantle. Just 3 plus sixes, 3 kickouts, 3 points is another handy little pick at 700. Okay, I think I do prefer the Lloyds and Dawsons and saving cash. I feel like they have the same output as Hearn and Short. Maine's probably 5 points more than both them, but he is, of course, another 50k more expensive than those guys. So whatever you do, those 5 will be very solid options for the rest of the year. And Laird in that 800k bracket is by and far away the best defender. Onto some forwards. I spoke about Kennedy and Dale. Probably those two would be probably my preferred picks than any of these 600k guys. If you don't have to go yet, I feel like 680 is still a good pick. It's frustrating that you probably missed out on 200k of price rises, but he's still a solid option. He's becoming probably a top 4 forward. I don't see him going under 105 for the rest of the year, so he is still 50 to 60k underpriced. He'll probably get that price jump this week, but again, his is a very, very good role. And you can play him as a forward, which is even better. Aaron Hall's an absolute gun. If you don't have him, just try and get him at all costs. Beware of trading Kelly this week. I've heard reports that it's not as serious as first thought. Just a rolled ankle, so he might play this week, and just be on the watch that he could be a little bit cheaper in a couple of weeks if you did miss the boat on him earlier in the season. So that's all with the forwards. Of course, Dangerfield if you haven't got him at 700k, he's a solid pick. And Zorko, at 800k is probably not a must have, but he will be in the top few forwards for the season. Probably costing you a little bit, but he's not an urgent trade in. And I think with Darcy out, a few people will be looking at forwards this week. So Dangerfield will probably be one of the most popular options. As I said, Marshall probably would have been the number one if he didn't was out, and same as Dunkley. It'd be nice in a few weeks after his first game, just getting back into the thick of things. But he has to spend another 2 weeks out, so fortunately he's not going to become much use at the end for the rest of the season. Onto this difficult mid bracket, there's just a truckload of options. Someone that's always performed well but has terrible job security in Fiorini. I wouldn't do it, but if you're absolutely desperate for a midfielder under 700, he could provide you with something. Just be aware his job security is pretty poor. So he can average that 105. He's done it before. He did it in his rookie season. He is a ball magnet. It's just not the best job security. And another one who's way underpriced, Andrew Gaff's at 650. Who would have thought? Showed up last week, 114. When Eagles dominate, he will score plenty. Fortunately, they haven't been doing that this year, but he's a sneaky little pick if you're looking for an underpriced mid, along with Tim Kelly as well, that I spoke about previously. In this 700 bracket, Oliver, Guthrie, they're both at 750. They were both in the 850s a month ago. Guthrie had a bit of a slow run with injury, took a little bit back to get going, but he's a little pig in that back line. Coming up from the midfield, he takes kick outs. He couple of plus sixes in the back pocket every week. He looks good as a fantasy player after a poor few weeks. Oliver couldn't get over 100 in 4 weeks, but finally did it this week. He's got a pretty decent ceiling, as shown by last week. And he had just an off few weeks, but I feel like at 750, he's a player to target. And someone that's hit a bit of form as of late, Carl Amon, averaging 120 in his last 3. Been nice to pick him up a few weeks ago, but he's always had the game to be a high scoring player, but he tended to go missing in games. Always looked to be at the top of the scorers after the first quarter and then disappear, but the last few weeks he's kept that going, and 130 last week, and he plays Collingwood this week, and you saw what Walsh did to them. He's a running machine, Amon, out in that wing, so at 740, he's a pretty solid pick to bring in this week. Just be wary. Players I've mentioned before that have just gone 120 in 3 weeks. They will have an off game sooner rather than later. But because players, it's unless you're Jack Still, Took Miller, Ollie Wines, that high price bracket. Well, I keep saying they're going to have an off week. But Carl Amon hasn't proven himself to be as consistent as them as of yet. But if you do pick him, good luck. I feel like he is a pretty solid option. And Cunnington I really like, but unfortunately didn't play last week. And I think with some of the older guys, more of the family guys in this COVID situation, it's probably best not to touch any of them, because missing games is, even though they might average more, missing games is much more heavily impacted at this back end of the year than 10 points in a week. And this price bracket, it's impossible to pick sometimes. Who would have thought Walsh would have been at 840 after a few down weeks last week? Steele's at 945, Miller's at 938. No one would have predicted this at the start of the year. I feel like with Miller, he's got a few tough games coming up, so I probably wouldn't want him at 9.38. Jack Steele, he keeps defying what I think. I thought he was just a super coach player, but now he's becoming a real DT beast. Walsh, he's going to be a pig in a few years' time. I can't see why not. He's just nearly impossible to tag. He got hold of 1 week. I forgot who it was. Tagged him out of the game. I think it was De Boer, but he's a tank. Like Took Miller, they're just running machines. Help you out defence, kicking goals up forward, and then rack you up tackles in the midfield. Absolute guns of players. Lovely English, Liam. Is a gun, a future gun. So, and he's pretty solid at 8.39 as an option this week. Looking at everyone else around him at 900k, he does look a pretty solid pick for this week. Ollie Wines continues his form, and like a Steele, they're pretty hard to be tagged out of games. So they're more of a contested type player. So yeah, no, I throw a blanket over most of these guys. You just hope they go 140 because you've seen. I rated Jared Lyons. He's gone 107 in his last 3, and that's 120 points in 3 weeks comparing Steele and Lyons. So it is difficult to pick at times with new players showing off. Who would have thought Ben Keys would have been in the 800s this year? Who would have thought Parrish would have been after playing his first few weeks this year in the forward line? He's now 849k and a captain option each week. So, and I feel like along with him and Walsh, 849 just seems massive, but compared to a Steele and Miller, they're 100k cheaper. So if I was wanting, and plus I've gotten my whole team, and Mitchell, Merritt, McRae has been down. He'll be probably 750 in a couple of weeks' time. Probably a handy little finishing pick. And Merritt and Mitchell have been very solid. Can't complain about them. So if you one name I would pick if you ask for it, I would probably go Parrish at 849k, probably best value. Then Walsh, then Mitchell. I think that's my top 3 for value picks in this price bracket. But if you can get to any of them, pick them up. That will serve you some good rewards. But if you have any comments about your team, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help with any questions you want to ask. So till tomorrow, I'll give a preview of this round coming. Handy captain options, my trades. Still working on that. At the moment is Haynes up to a mid-price premium defender in probably a Lloyd or a Dawson. So till then.